For more on the ANC's upcoming briefing, we're joined by SABC News Politics Editor Mzwandile Mbeje. Mzwandile, good afternoon. So the country is actually on tenterhooks, just waiting for the ANC to pronounce on its preferred iteration or form of a government. There's talks of a government of national unity, but the SACP says for them it would have to be a varied kind of a government of national unity. What are you hearing on the ground around this?
Well, a very good evening to you, Mfundo and Bongewe. And indeed, we are all ears on the ground. We are here. And if the ANC is to be believed, and that waiting will come to an end in the next 2 hours, we expect the president of the ANC to communicate the decisions that are being discussed right inside that room behind me, insofar as what is it that they would prefer in terms of going forward with forming either the government of national unity or some kind of a coalition. So that is what we've been hearing. In terms of the exact form of government, Mvundo, that we are picking up from the ANC is that they are saying, the operative word in this instance, they are saying national consensus. And you can really deduce what exactly they mean by that. National consensus will somehow, in my view, gravitate towards the government of national unity. And I think they've been quite open about that. And I understand why that would probably be what they would want. When you look at the scenarios in terms of how this government could be formed, there are so many. But there appears to have been a serious pushback from certain quarters on the coalition between the ANC and the DA. And I think for the ANC, they wouldn't want to alienate any of their base, but at the same time, they would be aware that the interests of the nation take precedence. So clearly, if you start to hear more and more about government of national unity, you will exactly understand why.
Now, in the absence of a definitive answer, I want us to interrogate the statement of the SACP as an alliance partner, just in case it holds the answers. Because when listening to Solima Paila, he was also speaking of this government of national unity, but he said it should not include neoliberal forces, which they say the DA falls under. Does this mean then that perhaps, yes, indeed, it would be a government of national unity, but the difference is that they would only bring in like-minded political parties?
Well, I think one of the issues and perhaps the stances that the SACP did highlight quite prominently in that briefing, was that they, as much as they are an alliance partner with the ANC, they are an independent organization. So what they are saying is what they believe. And in fact, they went as far as to say, we are not necessarily trying to influence what the ANC must do, but this is what we feel as the SACP. But I can tell you now, the ANC has an even greater responsibility in terms of governing. Yes, you may not necessarily want the neoliberal parties, but the fact of the matter is that South Africans, in their wisdom, decided that none of the parties that were contesting was going to have a majority or an outright majority. So in that way, basically forcing parties that may not necessarily share the same ideology to come together for the interests of the country. Because right now, post-elections, is not so much about parties, it is so much about the interests of this country. So what is it that will work best for South Africans? Is it ideology? Yes, ideology does push a particular agenda in terms of transformation and what you want to achieve. But at the same time, that ideology, if it was not embraced by the majority, so what do? Do you still push ahead? I guess that is where the issue of compromise and negotiations is so important. This meeting, Mfundo, that is happening here is very, very, very key, because they would look at all those scenarios. They would not only be informed by just one dimension in terms of the view, they would look at the broadness of what is it that this country needs, and then, of course, not losing the essence of what this political party represents. And I think that is what will inform them. So whoever will then come on board will have some kind of agreeing what is it to be done. That is why you hear the operative word, national consensus.
And then just in closing, we heard yesterday from the ANC spokesperson Mahlengi that they reached out to several political parties and attempted to also speak to the MK, but the MK snubbed them. What more do we know around this particular issue right now? Has there been some sort of a conversation? Because we also saw reports that they were going to probably deploy a number of ANC seniors that would probably be more likely to convince the MK to come to the negotiating table.
Well, I think the fact that can't be denied is that the MK party is a significant player, and I can tell you that many of these people here actually attribute the loss of the ANC directly at the hands of the MK party, because if you look at what is it that they took in terms of the percentage, they are currently at 14% and the ANC is at 40%. Whilst everyone expected, given the trajectory or the trends, that the ANC was going to decline, not many people thought it was going to decline so hugely. So that's why they look at a party like the MK party, which basically was voted, if you look at who voted for the MK party, is really the base of the ANC. So it's a significant party. I think that's why they are taking this into account. But as it stands right now, in terms of the communication with the ANC, they have reached out to the MK party, but so far the MK party has not responded. So they emphasized that their door remained open if then the MK party wants to engage with them, so they will still accept that. But from what we understand, Mfundo, from the MK party, it has basically said, we're willing to speak to the ANC, but not the ANC of Ramaphosa, which is quite interesting because as matters stand right now, the president of the ANC is President Ramaphosa. So if you want to speak to the ANC, necessarily that ANC is led by President Ramaphosa. So if then their stance doesn't change, I can tell you now for free that there will be no engagement whatsoever, because the ANC has also made it clear that we are willing to engage, we are very open, but if you then start to want to dictate, particularly about our president, just forget, that is off limits.
All right, Mzwandile, thank you very much for that. That's politics editor Mzwandile Mbeje.